I hear some people felt a certain kind of way on a previous video when I suggested that parents tell their children to pull yourself together. Okay. I understand people had some feels about that phrase, like go pull yourself together, because it seems cold and harsh and dismissive, more like I've started to adopt more of like a militant parenting style compared to that authoritative parenting style with the high expectations and within the context of the warm and fuzzies. And I get it. But I challenge you, if you had this reaction, to kind of like reflect a little bit and hear me out. All right, so the reason why we should be telling our children to pull themselves together is if we help them to regulate their emotions all of the time, well, then guess what? They're going to rely on you to help them regulate their emotions all of the time. And then when they get older, they need you around all of the time to help them regulate their emotions when they start to get heightened. We don't want that for them. We don't want them to rely on you. We want them to be independent. We want them to be adaptable so that no matter what situation they go into, if their emotions are heightened, they can regulate their emotions themselves. The other reason why I don't want parents to be helping their children regulate their emotions all of the time is because we don't know what's going on in their bodies. We don't know where they're feeling the emotions. We don't know what their bodies need. And so now we're just telling them to do things based off of how we regulate our own emotions. And that's not what they need. They need to be able to feel their own emotions wherever in their body it is. And they need to learn how, okay, based off of what their body is doing, how can they regulate their own body? Because when they are heightened emotionally, it's your autonomic nervous system, feelings, body parts, physiological systems going on in your body that you have no control over. And so you are now an outside person trying to tell someone what to do on inside of their body that you have no idea what's going on. You're just assuming, and then it might not even work. And then we have temper tantrums because have you ever done it where like, oh, I see that you're feeling frustrated. And they're like, no. And you're like, oh, you're feeling sad? No. And it's just like they're just bored or like disgust or whatever. And so, like, you're projecting your own things that you think you need onto your children. And then they don't ever learn to trust themselves and their own bodies. And the reason why this is problematic is because if they don't trust themselves, can lead them down the path of like obsessive compulsive disorder, because that's when people start to kind of disregard their five senses and just start to come up with all of these, obsessions and possibilities and what if thinking, this uncertainty, and they start to obsess and engage in compulsions based off of that. So we want them to trust themselves, because what I'm doing in therapy when I have kids or youth or anybody with OCD, I'm essentially teaching them you need to trust your five senses. And so by us telling them or helping them pull themselves together, we're telling them how to disregard their own body and to listen to us because we know best. Is that really what the message you want to convey to your kids? I didn't think so. Okay. Then the other thing is, like I said before, if they have to go somewhere and pull themselves together, well, then guess what? They're listening to their own bodies, and now they're learning what they can and cannot do, or what helps them regulate their own bodies and emotions. They don't have someone being like, maybe you should try this. Maybe you should try this. Hey, what about this? No, they're doing trial and error without fear of someone else coming in and being like, you should try this. No, you're doing it wrong. Da 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 da. No, trial and error is good for kids. So let them go into their rooms and let them figure out ways how to pull themselves together. without us telling them all of the time. This is another reason why we don't want to be telling kids to be careful all of the time. I remember I had a mom and she's like, oh, well, I tell my daughter like don't to be careful and that she shouldn't like go off of like jump off of couches and stuff like that. And I was like, well, do you mind if she's jumping off couches? And she's like, no, I don't want her to get injured. And I'm like, but your daughter does gymnastics. And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, so I'm pretty sure your daughter knows what she can and cannot do with her own body if she's in gymnastics. And she goes, oh. And I'm like, and you know that obsessive compulsive personality, like the obsessive compulsive disorder that she's kind of like leaning more towards? I'm like, yeah, that's because we're not allowing her to trust herself because you're telling her what she can and cannot do with her body. Stop it. Don't do it. Let them figure it out. If they get bumps and bruises, then they get bumps and bruises. So we want them to figure out. So what can we be doing? How can we be helping them, aid them, support them, guide them, be those guardrails to pull themselves together? Well, the one big thing that I really talk about is the first thing you need to talk about is parameters. What is an acceptable way for your child to express frustration and anger and those negative emotions? Are they allowed to stomp? Are they allowed to throw? Are they allowed to scream? Like, what are they allowed within your family values? What are they allowed to do versus what are they not allowed to do? So you need to figure out those parameters. Then the other thing, so like once you figure that out, then okay, when they are in their room and they're trying to pull themselves together, well, then you want to make sure that they're staying within those parameters. That is huge. And so like a lot of the times, like our thing is like, you can't slam doors. And so if any of our kids are slamming doors when they're trying to pull themselves together, we'll just go up and be like, hey, you slammed a door, try that again. So then they'll just come over, they'll close the door and I'll say, thank you. And then they'll continue to pull themselves together and it works out great. The other thing we want to keep in mind is, and I love teaching this to kids because it really matters when they go into, when they're emotionally heightened, are they more of a fighter or are they more of a fleer? Because if they're a fighter, that's what their body needs to do. And we need to help them complete the cycle. And that's why it's so important to let them learn how their body responds and what they can and cannot do, what's effective for them to complete the cycle. So because when we are in fight or flight, our body is doing certain things and it's going to continue to do those things until it completes the cycle. So what we need to be doing is if they're a fighter, here's some socially appropriate ways to fight. Have them do push-ups, anything, any behavior that's going to be mimicking like pushing, punching. So getting them a punching bag or a kicking bag, or having them do push-ups on the floor or on the wall, or having them do tuck jumps, anything like explosive movement that's going to kind of get that fight out of them. Maybe they're air punching, maybe they're like kickboxing, anything along those lines. I love it for kids that activate more in the fight place. Now, for those kids that are activating in the flee, like they're the fleers, they want to get out of there, well, then allow them to run, allow them to take a walk, let them go and do those things, let them change it up. One of the biggest things, one of my favorite things to do with my football players when they're angry is I will tell them to take a walk. And I remember one of my favorite players who loves what I do and he knows the importance of what I did. He was activated for once this year and I looked at it and I'm like, take a walk. He's like, no. And I'm like, dude, you are the one person that always brings me to everyone who's emotionally dysregulated. And now you're emotionally dysregulated. You won't listen to me. Take a damn walk. And so he's like, fine, I'll walk to this tree. And I'm like, all right then. So we walk to the tree. And so it's like getting them walking, getting them moving if they're more in that like flight piece. So asking your kid, okay, what does your body feel like? Does it feel like you want to fight something, or does it feel like you need to like move and walk? And maybe you're doing yoga, or maybe you're like doing Pilates, or maybe you're just walking around or skipping or whatever it is, running, sure, whatever it is to clear that mind and bring those emotions down. That's pulling themselves together. Now, the last tip I'm going to give you of how you help support your child pulling themselves together is remembering this phrase: more is caught than taught. You, as the parent, need to be able to pull yourself together when you are emotionally heightened, because based off of how you pull yourself together, your child's going to pick up on that, and chances are they're going to do that more often. So I'm going to create the video. Next week's video is going to be all about how do parents pull themselves together and how do parents regulate themselves. And the reason why we're doing a video, why I want to do a video specifically for adults and how they can pull themselves together, because this is such an important life skill for everyone to have. Everyone needs to have the ability to pull themselves together when they're emotionally heightened so that they can start achieving their goals, reaching their goals, be successful, because no one is successful. No one wins when you are emotionally explosive. And so if you have this life skill to pull yourself together, it is so important, because you can do it wherever you are, because you're able to do it. You have that skill. No one can take it away from you. It is amazing. It helps in all assets or aspects of your life, facets of your life, work, personal, romantic relationships, individual, all of the things. It is amazing. And I want you and your children to have this ability to pull yourselves together. And I know that triggers people, that phrase triggers people, but I encourage you to continue to watch this. Watch next week's video on it, specifically for adults, and then maybe even rewatch this video, because I want you and your children to be able to pull themselves together, because it's so important. And if everyone can pull themselves together, then guess what's going to happen? We're going to be throat punching the Gen Z mental health crisis. Let's go.